A city is more than a collection of buildings, roads, traffic signals, or colored locations on a map. It's a place where people live, work, play, worship, learn, and create. It's a place people choose to call home. When you look at the city today with its some 113,850 residents, it's easy to see why so many choose Victorville. Its strategic location, grand landscapes, clear skies, and available land have made Victorville a choice location for many. From its earliest settlers, the city's success was shaped by a group of individuals who possessed vision, strength, courage, and a fierce independence to seize opportunity. Jacob Nash Victor was one such man. The Southern California Railroad general manager believed a small town in the Mojave Desert was the perfect location for a terminal for the Second Transcontinental Railroad in the United States. In the 1880s, his dream became a reality when the Santa Fe Railroad opened its Pacific Terminal in Victorville. In 1895, the community was named Victor. The name was changed 6 years later to Victorville by the United States Post Office to avoid confusion with Victor, Colorado. By 1916, the growing town welcomed the First National Bank at 6th and D Streets. The following year, Mrs. T.H. McDonald opened the 10-bed Victor Valley Hospital. In 1924, Mrs. Kemper Campbell Sr. and law partner W.A. Sorensen acquired Verde Ranch along the Mojave River that served as a vacation retreat for Hollywood stars such as Greta Garbo and John Wayne. This Hollywood getaway would later host screenwriter Herman Mankiewicz as he wrote the first drafts of the classic film Citizen Kane. Clyde Tatum wasn't a movie star or a man of reputation in 1941. He moved from the Paris Valley to the high desert in search of land to farm potatoes. And while Tatum would enjoy some success as a farmer and cattle rancher, his role in residential and commercial development would leave a legacy that continues today. Tatum's move from farming into real estate development, however, was not by design, but of necessity to help his community save the newly established George Airfield from closure.
So it was the farming that brought Grandpa to the high desert, and to Victorville in particular. He got his hand into real estate development through a friendship and a relationship that he had with a gentleman named Harry Shepard, who was the congressman for this area. And Congressman Shepard was head of the Armed Services Defense Appropriations Committee. And at the time, George Air Force Base was not an Air Force base, it was an Army airfield. And it was slated to be shut down. So Grandpa and some of the other community leaders went to Congressman Shepard and asked, please don't shut this down. It's going to hurt the economy. And he said to my grandpa, we'll keep it open and turn it into an Air Force base if there's housing. Why don't you build the housing? And he said to him, I've never built any housing before. And he said, you'll figure it out. So Congress passed an act called the Wary Housing Act, which was sponsored by Congressman Wary. Wary Housing Act number 1 was at George Air Force Base. The Wary Housing Act was a federal funding mechanism whereby the private developer built the housing on the base, but it was then owned by the private developer, sort of in what we would refer to now as a public-private partnership. So Grandpa had ownership in a lot of that housing for a while till it reverted to the base, once he built it. And it was, like I said, Wary Housing Act number 1. It was the first ever done in the country, and he figured out how to build homes out there on George Air Force Base.
Tatum kept his end of the agreement and built housing at the airfield, and Congressman Shepard delivered on his promise, establishing George Air Force Base. That was just the beginning for Tatum. He would go on to develop many of the city's first housing tracts, Victor Valley High School, Ray Moore Stadium, and the expansion of Victor Valley Community Hospital. He also constructed the Green Tree Hotel, the award-winning Green Tree Tracks, and the city's first shopping center at 7th and Victor. As growth continued, the demand for county services increased, and soon a desire for local control led to talk of incorporation. By the mid-1950s, a group of community leaders, including Willard Wade, Joe Campbell, William Doc Osler, Bill Porter, Gladys Butts, John Delatorre, and Clyde Tatum, organized an incorporation effort and took the vote to the people in 1959. The effort failed because there was organized opposition from the existing sanitary, water, and fire protection districts, which feared a city takeover. Residents believed that taxes would increase with cityhood, so incorporation proponents went back to the drawing board to work with the special district boards and guarantee them autonomy for the first year of incorporation. The new campaign went before the voters in September 1962, which contained a promise that the new city would not collect property tax. Beverly Dudley, who moved to Victorville in 1952 with her late husband John, remembers that crucial election.
I just voted for it. I just thought it was a good idea. But I came from Alhambra, and it was a well-organized city. And I felt that it should be well-organized, and that's what I felt.
Bev and her husband were active in the community and purchased their first home from Clyde Tatum for only $28,500. Her husband was a school teacher and beloved tennis coach. She was a young mother who was active in the local women's club. Bev believed incorporation was good, but she recalls not everyone was convinced cityhood was a good idea.
But there weren't many of us that were for it. There was most of the old-timers. They didn't want it because they were afraid of cost them too much, that kind of stuff.
On September 21, 1962, incorporation passed with 706 votes for incorporation and 671 votes against cityhood. The new city council was comprised of Mayor Willard Wade and council members Joe Campbell, Gladys Butts, Sid Powell, and David Brownell. They hired Dave Williams to serve as the city's first administrator and opened the first city hall on Union Street in Old Town. The building was small and made business inconvenient at times, so city manager Dave Williams took to the streets and often conducted business from his car, as captured in this old news photo.
The city hall at that time was very small, offices down there. And Grandpa had developed the site where City Hall is now for commercial properties and went to the city and said, "We will give you this site for $1." And apparently, according to their story, it was one of the longest debates City Council had had at that time, whether to take the land or not. Number one, they wondered if there were any ulterior motives that Clyde Tatum might have had to have a move up there. And then number two, the biggest was, it's so far out of town, even though it was in incorporated parts of city of Victorville. But at that time, the freeway wasn't there. So the old Route 66 came down through 7th Street, and that seemed so far out of the way. And they finally decided to take it. Now, as you see, everything is on both sides of the freeway. So.
Once the excitement of incorporation had passed, it was time to go to work. Under a strong mayor form of government, the mayor and council members were intimately involved in the day-to-day operations, and it soon became apparent professional experience was needed. The young city, which had opted to incorporate without the benefit of property tax, needed forward-thinking leadership to develop a quality community. Their expectations would soon be met. On November 1, 1967, a young man named Jim Cox accepted the job as assistant to Dan Blankenship, the current city administrator. Within a month, Cox was appointed city treasurer by the city council. A few months later, city administrator Dan Blankenship and the city attorney unexpectedly resigned their positions.
First day with Victorville was November the 1st in 1967. And I came here as the assistant to the manager. I think it was administrative assistant.
Jim Cox took on the role of interim city administrator. One of his new duties included developing policies to change the city from a strong mayor-council form of government to a strong city manager form of government.
Mayor Campbell decided that there needed to be a complete change with the city of Victorville. The city attorney left, the city administrator left, and I was charged with changing the form of government to a council manager form of government. So they would hire a professional city manager who was trained as a city manager, and the council would delegate the authority and responsibility. Although they would still set policy, priorities, laws, the city manager would carry that out.
In spring of 1968, the City Council set in place these new policies. They hired Fred Baxter as the first city manager in July of 1968. He served a short term and left in the fall of 1969. Jim Cox was appointed city manager in December 1969, a position he would hold for more than 30 years. Among the priorities of the new city manager was the development of a major source of reliable income.
Clyde Tatum had begun developing. He was developing the golf course. He had developed Green Tree Inn in 1962. Built the first houses on the golf course in 1964. Once they had accomplished the incorporation and had a pledge of no taxes, how do you get money? And although there are funding sources from the state, that was the general fund was more dependent upon back then than it is today, such as alcoholic beverage control tax, motor vehicle no tax, cigarette taxes, and so on. Primary source of general fund income was sales tax.
While the new city government began to lay the foundation for its future success, it had much in its favor. The Victorville Chamber of Commerce, established in 1913, provided the city with the framework for business retention and a strong ally in business recruitment efforts. The chamber created a symbiotic relationship that continues to profit the city to this day. The Victorville Chamber is emulated by both the High Desert Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and Victor Valley African American Chamber of Commerce. Interstate 15 from Victorville to Barstow opened in 1958, which provided the city of Victorville with coveted freeway access. In 1961, Victor Valley College offered classes at Victor High School and later relocated to its present location on Bear Valley Road. Victor Valley College provides higher education and workforce development opportunities which have enhanced the city's success. Continental Interstate Telephone Company, the forerunner to Verizon, relocated its headquarters from Bishop to Victorville in 1962. This major employer would add to the growing job base created by longtime businesses such as Southwest Portland Cement. An institution in Victorville since 1916, Southwest Portland Cement Company chose Victorville for its location along the banks of the Mojave River for a nearby water source and the limestone deposits found in Black Mountain east of Apple Valley. Cesar Milan, a plant manager with Southwest Portland Cement, credits the plant's success to its strategic location and attractive workforce.
You have access to 20 million people in just in a radio of 200 miles. That's something that we need to promote here. Is this kind of facility that this area has for every kind of business, with access to 20 million people. That's a huge advantage for every company that wants to make business here in the High Desert.
Southwest Portland Cement employee John Anthony has always called Victorville home. John holds fond childhood memories of swimming in the Mojave River. He's had 35 satisfying years working at our cement plant.
And all us kids, a lot of times it happened close to the river, and all us kids would go down the river and jump in the water. And the folks and everybody else would be eating the sandwiches and drinking the beer and having a good time. It was a pretty close-knit community at that time. I remember walking down the streets of Victorville when I was young, and there wasn't a person that we didn't know. Every once in a while, but most of the time it was a hello here and hello there. And I noticed not too long ago, I walked down the street of Victorville, and there was not a person that I really did know. So it's grown quite a bit.
With companies such as Southwest Portland Cement choosing Victorville early in the city's development, coupled with the establishment of George Air Force Base and the new freeway, Victorville clearly possessed the ingredients to build a successful business community. The challenge for the city was how to lure retail to Victorville.
A part of trying to convince retailers to establish stores in Victorville was dependent upon a population, and that was the population of the whole valley. Hesperia, Adelanto, Apple Valley was not incorporated at the time. City of Victorville had the freeway passing through the city. And as we talked to retailers, they began to point out to, they had pointed out to the city, they pointed out to me when I became the manager, that if you're going to have retail stores, you have to have an adequate police force, fire protection for fire insurance, there must be sewer, water, and so on, and a drainage system. I mean, there had to be all those municipal type services that Victorville hadn't provided and was needing to provide. And there became a recognition that if it was going to be a retail center, that it had to develop some modern development standards. The big fear of the council is that if you do that, the cost will be prohibitive and they will develop someplace else. And it's a balancing system. But those stores realized it was an investment, and we developed a lot of standards for drainage, curbs, gutters. We talked to the special districts, and there was a lot of effort that went into improving sewers, drainage, curb gutters, street lights. There were no street lights back then. Fire hydrants were to a rural standard. So all of the municipal kind of standards had to be developed, and then everybody held their breath because the fear would be you drive the retail away. Clyde Tatum, who had begun developing in the city, pointed out that for those who believed that those standards would drive away business, his argument was that it actually brings business because it ensures that their investment is protected. It ensures then that future businesses would come in because their investment is protected because of good municipal services.
Among the wise decisions the young community made was the development of streets, sewers, streetlights, and bringing in the special districts under the city's control, such as the Fire Protection District. Darrell Peterson, who began as a volunteer in the fire department in 1963 and later served as fire chief, recalls the early years of the department and its growth.
The department needed a better equipment, faster response to the people, to bring down your insurance costs on your houses, things like this. And like I said, that I seen the need, what was coming around the corner, that the fire department had to develop itself into a full-time fire department.
With the addition of the fire department and the commitment to build infrastructure, Victorville continued to strengthen its position as the key city of the high desert. So it came as no surprise in 1974 when Sears announced it would open a store in Victorville. 2 years later, the Roy Rogers and Dale Evans Museum opened and officially placed Victorville on the map. But it was the 1986 opening of the Mall of Victor Valley that solidified Victorville's lead role in the high desert and clearly demonstrated that its early investment in infrastructure was indeed wise. The new mall offered residents more than 535,000 square feet of retail space and provided a steady source of sales tax income into city coffers that would provide for parks, police, and fire protection. The new mall also spurred housing developments on the west side of the city. The area immediately surrounding the mall soon became the ideal location for restaurants and retail businesses. The Dunia Plaza is the most recent example of continued development in this area. The 1980s and early 90s were years of unprecedented growth in both residential and retail construction. By all indications, Victorville was on a course of continued success, but everything was about to change. In 1988, the Base Closure Commission recommended realignment of 145 military bases, which included George Air Force Base. The base closure took millions of dollars from the local economy. Housing prices plummeted. Jobs were lost. The leaders of the high desert created a new vision for the closed base. To responsibly move this vision forward, the local communities worked together to form the George Air Force Task Force, which was formed in 1989. The task force was the precursor to the Victor Valley Economic Development Authority, commonly known as VEDA. George Air Force Base closed in 1992. And in 1996, a team of Victorville officials, including Jim Cox, Mayor Terry Caldwell, and 1st District Supervisor Kathy Davis, were given the blessing from the County of San Bernardino, Hesperia, and Apple Valley to proceed with negotiations for acquisition of George Air Force Base from the federal government. Planning and developing the closed airbase would prove complex and expensive. Members of VEDA were busy with the challenges of a slowing economy and later voted to provide the city of Victorville with the responsibility to develop the base. The former George Air Force Base was renamed Southern California Logistics Airport, or SCLA. Under a public-private partnership, the city of Victorville and Sterling, a California-based development company, created a plan to develop the former 8,500-acre airbase into a civilian multimodal freight transportation hub supported by air, ground, and rail connections. Soon, the old hangars were repaired and new structures built as SCLA began to take on new life. Today, SCLA employs close to 3,500 skilled workers and is home to numerous companies, including General Electric, FedEx, Boeing, Pratt & Whitney, Newell Rubbermaid, Dr. Pepper Snapple, Constellation Power Plant, and more. As the national and global economy improves, SCLA is poised to capture growth. A planned 3,500-acre intermodal rail and multimodal complex, including rail-served facilities, will make SCLA a premier business location for the West Coast. Throughout Victorville's history, one ingredient for success stands out above the rest: its human infrastructure. Victorville people not only created business opportunities, but opportunities for its people through education, service, and family to create a community.
I was the first Afro-American Miss Victorville. And I went to the California Miss World division. I went all the way to the California Miss World and was televised down in Marina del Rey. I actually was the very first in Victorville, but not only the first in Victorville, but probably one of the first in Southern California to be a beauty queen at that time. But it was good to represent the city of Victorville. And so it kind of helped put Victorville on the map. At the Orange Showground, I was the very last one, and I got a standing ovation from 30,000 people because I was the very last in the city of Victorville. And my sponsor, the one that ran around with me was Bonnie Tatum, Clyde's wife. Yeah, she took me everywhere. She was my little guardian angel that made sure that everything was right and, all the contests. And those are very fond memories, extremely fond. And the people of Victorville were very proud, extremely proud.
Serving as Miss Victorville was an exciting experience for Barbara, and it would serve as her entree into a life of community service that would range from teaching to serving on the city's Blue Ribbon Committee and county education committees to the Route 66 Museum.
What I'm even prouder of is there are some things in here that are older than me. And you point them out and you tell what they are and you tell the history of them, and each item has a history. It has a life of its own and it has a story of its own. I just wish that everybody in Victorville would come to the museum. Just come once. I guarantee you'll come back.
Here, the grocery store, the family ran it. So the kids were running the store. I learned how to count and make change most of the time by working with my grandfather here in the gas station, learned how to pump gas. I knew exactly where my dad went to work because I went with him. I knew where my mother went to work because I stayed there with her all day. And so the culture and heritage of America is epitomized by families, and families being involved with each other's lives and with what's going on in the community. There is a lot less crime, a lot less kids falling through the cracks, whether you're black, white, red, purple, or polka dotted, when your family is there. And we knew a lot of people. If they got in trouble, we were on the phone. Do you know what your son did? Dad was down here the next day with the son. You're going to pay for this. You're going to clean it up. We didn't worry about the police coming and taking care of it. The families took care of their own. We looked out for each other. It doesn't matter what church or nationality or race. We were a city, a community of people that cared about our neighbors.
The Blecks were considered a model family in the community for their service and were honored as the most involved family in 1971 by the San Bernardino County Fair. Joan's experience growing up and working in Victorville has shaped her view of family, community, and business.
What we have to do is begin to understand that we aren't the afterthought. You know, we have within this city and within the towns surrounding it, we have just very capable people, and especially capable young people. Our children are not less smart than anyone else in the world. In fact, we're proving they're smarter better. We have the ability to raise up a generation of students and children who understand that the high desert is a wonderful place to live and that they should come back here. So what I hope for is that we'll be able to get college classes here. Won't have to travel over the hill, won't have to go anywhere else to go to school. And I think that would be my hope, you know, that we really impress upon our students that, yeah, there are a lot of great vocations that you can get into, but you need to go somewhere after school. You know, you need to go there. It's not about, you know, you're in the desert, so it's wild and free, and, you know, let's pick it up and go. There's so much here to offer. You know, there's nowhere else like it. And I think that we should be attracting a lot of high-tech businesses and people. And the people around here are great. You know, they really are great.
Piercy desired to impact the lives of children and returned to school, where he earned a teaching credential and a master's degree in education. He worked as a teacher and principal. In 1995, Rick Piercy created a revolutionary plan that emphasized science and mathematics in a way which excited, challenged, and motivated young minds. Community service is a way of life for Victorville native Colleen Quinn, whose familiar voice can be heard on the popular radio station Y102, providing essential community information and goodwill for the past 18 years. Colleen, born at George Air Force Base, is active with a number of service clubs, including Today's Woman, A Better Way Domestic Violence Shelter, American Cancer Society Relay for Life, and the Victorville Chamber Reading Buddies. But Colleen and her husband, on-air radio personality Preston Stone, don't view their involvement in the community as work.
Knowing that I am kind of being a voice for the community, for the high desert, for the people that may be naysayers saying it's ugly here or there's nothing to do, or you know, just anything negative. I like being that voice that says, no, this is a positive place, here's some fun things to do, here's good things that are going on, and letting people know, you know, just about the high desert and how great it can be. That's one of my greatest pleasures, is being, you know, just being a local person that can really honestly say and tell and let people know about all the great things that we all have to offer here in the high desert. That's being right here, so close to, you know, so many things that you can get to easily, and that whole family feeling, that small town feel. Even when, you know, especially if they're moving to a big city, but I think one of the things that's going to keep people here is that it's just a great place to raise the family. We have a lot to offer for the kids now. We have so many great, I love that there's all these teams now, these different things for both the boys and girls, and you know, where they can go out and travel and play against, you know, people that used to be rated higher than us, but now we have so much talent here in the desert that we are competing right up there with everybody else. So I really think the family aspect is what will keep people here, and the growth and the potential. We have so many great new businesses coming. There's going to be all these job opportunities. I really feel that is all wrapped around the family, and that's what keeps people here. I know that's, what does it for me.
Felix G. Diaz is a Victorville native. Like many homegrown citizens, community service is a way of life for him. He has taught children from grades K through college and taught at Victor Valley College for 23 years. He coached football and track. Felix was the second Mexican-American, he prefers Chicano, elected to the Victorville City Council and served from 1992 to 1996 and is responsible for the development of the Veterans Memorial in Victorville on D Street and Forest Avenue.
Set two goals, set immediate goals and set future goals. You can reach anything you want to reach. You can any job that you want to reach. You can reach it. It takes hard work. It's not handed to you. And if you leave the city of Victorville and you really have an ambition of seeing a vision of Victorville someday growing into I don't want to say metropolis, but growing into a large enough city that's recognizable, think about coming back and working in your city and giving back to your city for what the city has given you, because the city gives you something every day, just like God gives you something every day. Give back. Just be willing to work hard and give back what is given to you, and make it a bright future for your kids and your grandkids, because they're going to be here after you're gone.
Longtime resident Lionel Dew relied on key mentors throughout his career. Today, Lionel believes Victorville's future leaders hold great promise and contributes much of his time mentoring those future leaders.
We now are witnessing one of the greatest generations ever when it comes to our younger people. And with that said, I believe their progression will be so phenomenal. It would be if though I and others were standing still. That's what I expect of them.
Thad Hoffmaster had a challenge. How does he hire locally when the local prospects don't possess the skills necessary for the job? He successfully partnered with Victor Valley College to develop an aviation training program.
We certainly, when we purchased the facility 3 years ago, we made a big commitment to the community. We try to use every available resource that Victorville can provide us before going outside of that realm. And it's worked out very well. I mean, from a standpoint of our printing, our business cards, our uniforms, our shirts, to the labor force inclusive of the A&P, almost everything is done within the jurisdiction of the city of Victorville. Once again, our biggest goal was, how can we develop a labor force that's a local labor force that we know have roots in Victorville, that have family here, and that are going to want to stay here. So providing that opportunity to us is first and foremost, especially as we continue to grow. I mean, as we said, we started off 3 years ago with 43 employees. We're now up to close to 200. And we have goals of getting to somewhere in the neighborhood of 250 to 300 by the end of next year. So it's important to us that we have the resources to be able to provide that labor force for the long haul.
Victorville's first 50 years were filled with excitement, growth, and challenge. Our community leaders have measured and implemented their visions of the future, which has made Victorville the greatest economic engine in the high desert. The La Mesa Nisqually Overpass has been a topic of discussion for over 25 years. The La Mesa Nisqually Interchange project is well underway and will be complete in 2013. This $45 million project is a collaborative effort with the City of Victorville, San Bernardino Associated Governments, and Caltrans. When completed, the new interchange will provide an additional east-west corridor in the city and will greatly improve local traffic circulation. Walmart is building a supercenter at the new Dunia Plaza located at Bear Valley off Amargosa. The new store features 78,000 square feet and has created approximately 85 new positions. Numerous other opportunities also fill the Dunia Plaza because of this Walmart expansion. St. Mary Medical Center's new Victorville Oasis complex is set to break ground in September 2012 and will be located on Amargosa between Bear Valley and Main Streets. As population growth will continue to drive the need for goods and services, the City of Victorville will again be challenged to provide infrastructure to attract new businesses and services while continuing to provide essential services for its residents. Pacific Aerospace is just one example of Victorville's success story, the story of what can happen when people of vision, strength, and courage come together. So what will the next 50 years bring Victorville? It's our story to write.